Hey guys, it's Scott with Scotty B Cards. In this video, I want to ask you, what if? So we've seen Marvel's What If on Disney Plus, where they ask, what if this specific thing happens, what happens in the Marvel universe? Well, I want to do the what if question in regarding baseball cards and the 2022 baseball season. So I have a special guest named Philmington. He has a YouTube channel. He's a great guy, great follow if you want to check out his channel. But I'm asking him my what if questions for this season, and I give my thoughts and we hear what he also has to think. So let's just jump right into it. All right, Phil, so the very first what if. What if Juan Soto has a good season? And when I say good season, I don't mean an MVP season. Let's say he has 4 to 5 WAR, 25 home runs. Not great, but a good season. What happens to his cards?
Well, it's sort of what we saw last year, 29 home runs. If you're to separate the season into two halves, sure, you had one very exceptional half, but also one less than exceptional half. Altogether, that's a 29 home run season, about a 6.5 WAR. That is a very good season, and that's a very good season for Juan Soto. It's really in line with his expectations, but at this point, he is selling for a lot more than the other guys sort of in his age class. So talking about Tatis, Acuna, 6.5 WAR is very, very good. It's not going to guarantee an MVP. It probably won't get you an MVP if there are 162 games in a season. I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep his prices here. If people don't remember, I believe it was early on in 2021, there was a survey that was issued to MLB ownership. Which player would you want to start your franchise around? Tatis, Acuna, and Soto. And Soto came in way below the other guys, way below Tatis and Acuna. How much has really changed since then? What was the reason for that? It was because he's not as multifaceted. He can't contribute as much with his glove, with base running versus those other two guys. Granted, some things have changed with injury statuses with those other two guys. I still think it's going to take for Soto to not just continue to grow, but for him to maintain his status in the hobby, his current price levels. He's going to need to do something great. Mike Trout was able to win 3 MVPs in his 20s. When's Juan Soto going to be able to win his first one? That's important. We need to see that. And we need to see that for all 3 of them very, very soon.
I know we can say, like, there's the argument Soto was robbed of the MVP by Harper this year. And then in the shortened season, he had great numbers as well. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts were above him in MVP voting. So there's that argument he could have already had 2, kind of like Trout with Miguel Cabrera in his early 20s, right? Trout was second to Miguel Cabrera 2 years in a row when he probably should have won if you look back. I know Miguel Cabrera had a triple crown, but a lot of the other numbers weren't super positive for him. But with Soto, it's just his cards are so expensive. Like, if you look at his Bowman chromatograph, like you said, it's $5,000 versus for Soto versus Tatis at $3,000, Acuna at $3,000. I think Ohtani's even close to like less than Soto. So he has to have a great season. And I have a lot of Soto, and he's probably my favorite player that's young, but he needs to do something great or else his stuff is going to have a hard time maintaining those values because you're only young for so long. And those youthful years are the most important for your legacy. Because if you can have an MVP case before your 30s, everything's just gravy about where you're going to land all time. So I think we're in the same boat. Let's hope he actually can maintain, because it would suck, because I want to see him be good. That's how I feel about it. So what if Wander Franco is able to be as good as the market says he is? We're saying he is the next guy, better than anybody else in the league, not named Mike Trout right now. What happens to his hobby? Do you see these ultra high-end print runs being able to maintain value? Do you see him being in 40 sets this year, maintaining value in his Bowman chromatographs? What are your thoughts, Phil?
Yeah, well, if Wander Franco shows his true self and that ends up being somebody who can hit 30 plus home runs consistently, somebody who can play perhaps above average shortstop. I know you've talked about this in your videos, how it's kind of questionable, like how good of a shortstop he really is defensively. He is relatively new to that position. Well, I look at Wander Franco's pricing compared to Vladimir Guerrero, Bowman Chromes, and it's actually pretty similar if you look at their autographs. And okay, you might look at that and be like, wow, Vlad should be more expensive. But let's remember who Vlad is and his place in the hobby and why he sells for cheaper than Tatis. He's a first baseman. He's chubby, and all he does is hit home runs and hit for a high average. He's kind of 1 or 2 dimensional based on what he can provide. Wander Franco has the ability to provide everything. So if he starts to show a glimmer of that, remember, he's really young too. This is a guy that could get a lot more expensive than Vlad. He could get on the same page as like a Soto with regards to the price levels there, I think.
I think he could pass Soto. with just the positioning, and also just for some reason, everybody who's new to the hobby, we've been hearing about this wonder prospect, Wander Franco. And if he can perform, I think he could be the next highest Bowman Chrome for a little bit. And I don't think the prices are justified at all, but I do think it's going to happen. With Vlad, like you said, the position really hurts his overall value in the hobby. We've seen first basemen don't really sell unless you're Albert Pujols-esque. Miguel Cabrera's values aren't that high. And I don't think Vlad's going to have a better career than Miggy at all. So it's just interesting to see. So Wander Franco, I hope he's good, because it'd make collecting this year really, really fun. It'll lift the entire market in my eyes, as everybody's chasing packs and everything again, buying out all retail. It'll help you, Phil, with your rookie explosion box values. So, you have a lot of wax, but
yeah, I got a Montgomery membership now too. So I'm looking forward to the Sapphire and all the other stuff I can chase Wander in.
A Wander Sapphire, that if he's good, that's going to be a $3,000 card. I'm actually interested to see what his golds go for out of Series 1. Those could be $500 plus out of the gate.
I'm gonna be tracking all the numbered stuff, and from Sapphire, I don't know what the print run will be for base this year, but I might avoid base for the first time with Sapphire.
Yeah, seriously. Next question for you, Bryce Harper. What if Bryce Harper wins another MVP award? He won his second. He had 5.9 B WAR. I think he had 6 point something F WAR. He barely edged out Soto in my eyes. If he wins his third MVP, what is his legacy? Where is he at price-wise? Because his Bowman Chrome BGS 9510s less than $800, right around $800. While Mike Trout, who has 3 MVPs, is right around what, $20,000? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I see Harper's career, and sure, he's played at a high level, but not. He hasn't statistically performed that much above the average player as like a Trout has. He hasn't had that sort of deviation away from the mean. So what I see is, maybe if you looked at his career, has he finished like top 3 in MVP without winning it? Does he have any other years where he's actually been in the top 5? Like, he either has like a top 10, top 20 season, or he wins MVP. So that part's a little annoying. Give some credit to Harper. Right now, he's selling for cheap. Given that he has 2 MVPs, and I believe, are there any other active players other than Trout and Pujols that have more than 1?
Miggy,
are there?
But that's it. Is he active? Miggy. He's basically out the door. So
he's on his couch. Yeah. So I think that's pretty incredible. Give him a third. MVPs matter a lot with regards to being able to get into the Hall of Fame your first year. The hobby value, it should matter. It's a major, major statistical accomplishment. And for him to do it still being 30 years old, if he's able to do it this year,
this is age 29 season is all.
Age 29.
He's 28 right now.
Yeah, so he becomes a guy that, well, if his prices don't go up, he'll be even more undervalued. This is a guy that people should be taking a little bit more seriously. They should be treating him. Mookie Betts is undervalued too, but they should be closer to Trout than they are probably right now. And they should be closer to Juan Soto, Tatis, and Acuna levels, because there's a good chance that 2 of those 3 guys end up like Betts or Harper with regards to their entire career, and end up actually falling below them.
Definitely. And so I like to look at WAR for position players, because I think it's one of the best stats to gauge all around value. It's hard to compare Mookie versus Harper, because one hits for power and is more dynamic in regards to offensive capabilities. Like, Harper has a career 142 OPS plus. Mookie has 130 OPS plus. It's a big difference. But Mookie right now, going into his age 29 season, I believe, is actually at 50 WAR already. So if he can stay healthy to his mid 30s, and he has 5 WAR per year for the next 6 years, he's already at 80 WAR. That's really high. It's going to be hard for someone like Soto to match that. Soto had 7.1 B WAR. Mookie's beaten that 3 or 4 times already in his short career, and that's Soto's peak. So I'm just saying, I think we're forgetting a lot of these current stars. Bryce Harper, we're forgetting Mookie Betts, we're forgetting these other ones. They aren't, like, Mookie's not as exciting as those other players because of his game. He's not going to do some of the Soto shuffle. He's not going to be having an OBP of 550 like Soto could potentially have. But I think a lot of the young guys, in comparison to Bryce Harper, compared to Mookie, compared to even Miguel Cabrera, if you look at his actual card values, are really high. So I think if Harper wins the third MVP, I think his stuff goes up, but I don't think it's as much as we would both hope or think. Like we already talked about, he's only had MVP votes 4 years in his career. He was 30th overall as a rookie, And then he didn't get any more votes until he won Rookie of the Year in 2015. And then he didn't get any MVP votes until 2 years later when he was 12th overall. And since 2017, this is his first year with MVP votes. So he's just like a player who has peaks and valleys. But if you look at his stats in Philadelphia, overall, he's actually becoming consistent. And that's why I think Harper's values could tick up if you can just be a guy who hits 30 home runs, 100 RBI with a 280 batting average. Do that and your cards will be fine. Instead of being the guy who goes 240 out of nowhere after MVP year like he did and had 1.9 WAR after like a 10 WAR season. So it's just interesting to see how he's all over the place. So what if Fernando Tatis Jr. becomes an elite defensive player? Right now, he's about an average shortstop. If you look at outs above average, he's above average for baseball player, below average for shortstop. He's about 23rd for MLB shortstops last year. If he can become a top 5 defensive shortstop, what happens to his cards?
Well, one of the nice things about Mike Trout, not to talk a lot about him a lot during this video, but he was able to put up 8 to 9 WAR seasons. And I think that defense is what, and staying healthy, of course, those two things are what's holding Tatis back right now from emerging in that class of young studs. And I would say just Soto and Acuna, but it's really Wander now as part of that as well with Vlad and Ohtani.
Bobby Witt next in that group as well, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, right. Tatis is he has the athletic ability to be an above average shortstop. I think a lot of what we saw from him last year were mental errors, a lot of throwing errors that can be fixed. It's not issues with range that we see with other shortstops with different builds. We might see that a little bit with Wander if we haven't already. We've seen that with Bo Bichette. If he's able to put together an above average statistical defensive season, and we're able to see an 8-9 WAR, the hobby might kind of go nuts and remember like, oh, this is what Tatis is capable of. And okay, maybe his prices should be a little bit higher versus some of these other players that are in similar age to him. I look at Carlos Correa. He's an elite shortstop today, but sometimes it just takes a few years for these guys to get used to it and to eliminate those mental mistakes. Another very athletic, wiry shortstop player. Correa was able to turn his defensive, what was a liability into a somewhat of a prowess later on. And if we see that with Tatis, that could be quite huge. Of course, he's got to stay healthy too. Now, will he be more expensive than Soto if he has a season like this where he's able to get to an 8 or 9 WAR? Well, it's not quite apples to apples because Soto's got a lot fewer rookie cards, which is something you've talked about, from since time immemorial on your channel, and I've talked about it at great lengths on my channel too. So I don't know, it's quite a given, but Tatis prices will certainly be more attractive than they are today.
Yeah, and so Tatis, I wouldn't say he's hated. He's not a villain in the league like Correa is, but he's not as beloved like Soto is for some reason by fans. And I think that has a bigger play in these younger guys than it should, because I think long-term that's going to be overlooked. Look at, this is a bad example, so please just listen before you make judgment. But like Alex Rodriguez, he was the most hated baseball player of all time while he was playing, in my opinion. Now people don't mind A-Rod, because of the stuff he's done afterwards. But as time passes, you kind of forget the character of a player. And I think that could benefit Tatis if his baseball reference page looks amazing. And Tatis is not Alex Rodriguez. He's more likable. He's a fun figure. He's a good guy. But overall, I just think that there is untapped potential with his cards for that reason. He still has a lot. He doesn't have 2021 print runs, a lot of his cards. But Soto, he's just the hobby's darling right now. And every couple of years it switches. It won't be Soto in 4 years. It'll be the next Uber prospect, and it could be Tatis at that point. So
yeah, I think that him being so flashy, like such a big Instagram presence, he's just a good looking guy too. I think that would cancel out any of that perception character flaw thing. I don't really see too much of the character perception being a negative for him right now. But
you actually do polls, and everyone calls him like the most overrated player in baseball, which makes no sense. Like, people think he's overrated, but why? Is it because he has a little bit more hype around him because of the way he plays, and that's why they think he's overrated like Harper was? They don't like how he's dynamic, or is it something else? So that's kind of what I'm implying. He's a much better person than A-Rod. Doesn't have to worry about the character clause with him, but it's more of just, why isn't he liked? Because there's a reason. I just don't know what it is. Next one. What if Ronald Acuna Jr. isn't as good as everybody expects him to be immediately after his ACL recovery? So everybody's kind of counting on him being as good as he was, stealing 30 bags, hitting 30 home runs, and he could. But what if he just has a normal recovery arc where he's okay this year, and then by age 25, he can get back to himself? What happens to his hobby?
Age 25, we see the real Acuna. Nobody wants to wait till age 25. He'll be pretty much a senior citizen at that point.
Exactly.
This hobby is not patient. This hobby shifts attention quite quickly, short attention spans. What have you done for me lately? There's just too much competition. Maybe if Juan Soto, Tatis, Vlad, Wander, Bobby Witt, if they didn't exist, then we could hold out and wait for another year. But this is a guy that we haven't really seen on the field a whole lot over the last few years, and we need to see stuff. I mean, we saw a big skills change in 2021 where he was able to kind of retain his power and hold a very high walk rate and limit the strikeouts.
Yeah.
We started to see at least the walk rate in 2020, and we saw the walk rate and the K rate go down in 2021. And the hobby still, was still wanted to see a little bit more. Okay, he's on pace to win MVP, but we're still in May, and then he goes down. Then it's like, the hobby collectively needs to see Acuna playing at a high level now, ASAP.
So we saw this with Adrian Peterson, I believe is who it was. I'm not a football guy, so if I'm wrong, forgive me, because football is not my thing, but he had an ACL tear. He came back like super fast, 8 months, and he was the same guy. That's more of the rare case than the common case. It takes some time for a player to get his confidence back, to get the ability back where he's able to do these dynamic moves and plays and cuts. So I think it'll take some time, but I think Acuna is going to be fine long-term. I just don't think his age 24 season is going to be as good as we're hoping. And I hope I'm wrong, because the better the player is, the better it is for baseball in general, right? But if he is a little bit slower, I think he will lag far behind Soto and Tatis. And honestly, before he got hurt, his cards weren't that high. After he got hurt, his cards actually spiked a little bit, and then they never really dropped that much. They're not that much lower than where they were. They're down maybe 10 to 15%. And it might be lower now because of the whole market in general, but he never really had a drop off. So we're still expecting it. And that's a very hard thing to expect from a player, to come back and be as good as he was prior to injury right off the bat. All right, Phil. So thanks for hopping on. You want to talk about your channel, your rookie explosion box, everything you do real quick, so people who are watching can go like, subscribe, and buy?
Well, it's easy to remember. Philmington. My name's Phil, and I live in Wilmington. And you can find me, same handle, Instagram, eBay, YouTube. Trying to put out more content this year, about one video a week, not 6 a week like what Scott does. I've got the RC Explosion box, a little subscription thing I do. You can find out more about that on my channel. And it was awesome. Thanks for having me on. Hope the viewers enjoyed.
I recommend following Philmington, one of my favorite YouTubers out there to watch for sports cards. But I know it means a lot, Phil. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you in the next video.